right, now we know both for loops and while loops. We are going to go through one example and use both of the loops that we know and generate the code for them. So two simple examples. First one is you are going to have a sequence, and you're going to go through and basically print all of the items in that sequence, which we have done in the previous example, but we are going to do it again and basically go through all of the loops that we know to do that for us. So print all of the items in a sequence. Okay, so create whatever sequence you want. It could be a tuple, it could be a list, it could be a string. It doesn't matter. So whatever you like to have, you can have it. I'm going to go with a string for now, but you can always change it. It doesn't matter. The value that you have for your sequence is irrelevant. You can later on come and change this one. Your code for the loop part is going to stay the same. So here we are going to say car. All right. So first we are going to start using a while loop to do that. That was the first loop that we learned. And it's like a general form. It has all of the 4 steps. And we are going to take that while loop and change it to a for loop. All right. So to go through this one, the sequence, we need to have the index numbers to access the items. So if I want to simply have all of the items printed without a loop, I'm going to say, okay, what is index number, sequence index number 0, and then print sequence index number 1, and then print sequence 2. Okay, so you're going to have all of those 3 elements to be printed, and that way you're going to get CA and R printed out, right? But as we see, there's a pattern here. Everything is the same. The only thing that is changing is the index number 0, 1, and 2. And we can simply create that using a loop. So why not do that? So I'm going to say, okay, the start value in this one is 0. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to set up my condition. As long as this index number is less than the value that we have is 2, so I'm going to go 1 above that. So I want 0, 1, and 2. So if I say as long as index is less than 3, it's going to cover all of those values. And then here I'm going to say print. I'm going to actually use one of these. So print this one, but instead of 0, I'm going to use the variable for it. So that way, as I'm changing the variable to like 0, 1, or 2, it's going to update that, and I'm going to get the appropriate value. And then when I'm done in step 4, I'm going to update my conditional variable. So index IDX plus 1. So that should give me exactly the same thing as I was hoping to get and as I got in the previous example. So CA and R using a while loop, right? So here we go. So in the next example, I'm going to use the exact same thing, like print the same items using a for loop. So with for loop, when it comes to for loop, you have 2 different ways of accessing the items. First one is you can directly go through the items and print each single item. We say that is iterating over the item. And then the other one is very similar to what we have in the while loop. You're iterating over index number. So let's first do the index number. So iterating, because that is very similar to what we have here. Iterating over index number. And then next one, we are going to do the iterating over the item itself. Okay, so when we are iterating over index number, we are going to do very similar things as here. So we're going to have our keyword for. We are going to create a variable. I'm going to call it IDX again. So you can reuse the same variable. It's going to overwrite the previous values that you had for it. So IDX. And since I'm creating all of those index numbers, I need to use range. So I'm going to say, okay, in range of, the start value here is 0, so I'm going to put that 0 here. My end value is 3, so I'm going to put 3 here. And my step is 1, so I'm going to put 1 here, right? You see I'm using the information in my while loop to set up my for loop. You can do the exact same thing if you want to go from for loop to a while loop. But in general, it is like figuring out your start value, your end value, and your step. And we have all of those because we know we are starting from index number 0, and we know our end index is 2. So we have all of those values. And then print sequence index number. All right, and we have that. I have seen this a lot, that the students put this inside their for loop. Don't do that. You're already doing it here. If you put that inside your for loop, you're messing up the whole iteration inside your for loop. So you don't need to iterate manually when you're using your for loop. It does it for you. It goes through all of these items. It creates all of those index numbers for you. It increments them in each iteration. So you don't have to worry about them. Step 1, step 2, and step 4 are done in this line automatically for you. So if you run this one, you're going to get CAR twice, one coming from while loop and then one coming from your for loop. And we can put like empty print statement to separate them when we are printing. So here we go. So one is from while loop, one is from for loop. And then last one, we are going to do the same thing. And this time we are going to iterate over the item. So this one, you basically go through and you create your variable, and you simply say from that sequence, right? Just go directly into that sequence, take the item from that sequence, and assign them to this variable item. And then you print the item. So in this case, you don't have to worry about indexing or anything like that. You directly go into your sequence and print the items, okay? So just keep that in mind. One last thing I would like to change about this program that I have written is, instead of just putting this 3, which is like a manual end value, you can use your len function to do that. So len of that sequence gives you 3. So why not use that len? Because if you do that, then if this sequence changes, you don't need to worry about changing this value. So same thing goes into the end value here. And that should work exactly the same. Now, if you change this one, nice car is going to automatically go through the whole thing for you in each iteration. Okay, so make sure you use len function in combination with your loops to make it more automatic, instead of you manually setting all of the end values for yourself. So I want you to practice something else and see if we can use the loops that you know to generate those numbers. So in the next example, just try to print all the items or all of the values from 1 to 10. And then in another example, print all of the values from 10 to 1. Okay, 10 to 1. Or 100 to 150, 150 to 100. Just do examples like that to get very comfortable with writing loops, all right? At some point, you should be very quick and be able to write a loop in general. If you see a pattern, you should be able to write the loop in like a couple of minutes, all right? And then you should focus on the problem solving of it rather than thinking about what you should put there to create your loop, right? Alrighty.